Still on politics, the politics of defence this time and the defence of our own country, Australia. It's been revealed today that Australia's $10 billion a year defence industry is becoming increasingly frustrated over the new Albanese government's defence strategic review. And it's warning the much-hyped military blueprint is, in their language, vague, underfunded, and it's becoming mired in bureaucracy. Joining me now is the Director of Strategic Analysis Australia, Michael Shoebridge. Michael, great to be with you again. They say the hardest job in politics is being Defence Minister because you have to deal with the defence bureaucracy. That's probably right, isn't it?
Yes, you've got to wonder if being the Deputy Prime Minister and the Defence Minister is a good idea. Defence Minister is a full-time job. But I think a big problem the government's starting to have is the document they released is a cobbled-together public document. And I think the strategic review they were handed by Angus Houston and Stephen Smith is probably a much more coherent, sharper document. So it's their unwillingness to show us what the review actually said is causing some of this trouble and reaction.
Well, I guess that decision is all about national security, is it?
I don't think so. I think on things like the Hunter frigate project, which apparently the reviewers were scathing about, it's taking a decade to get the first ship. It's going to cost $45 billion to get vessels that are undergunned and probably overweight. So the review was quite clear that that was a big problem. You wouldn't know that from reading the public version. That's not about classified stuff. That's just what's embarrassing to the defence organisation.
Well, Cam Stewart broke that story in The Australian today, and I must say, when I'm sitting there reading that this morning, thinking to myself, I've got a sense of deja vu. So many times we've come up with hardware improvements or investments that end up falling over for being the wrong piece of equipment. Does anyone ever get the blame for that?
Well, that is a fantastic question, because at the heart of the problems with the strategic review right now is that Richard Marles is on record as saying the only people that did anything wrong for the last decade were a small number of coalition ministers, and the defence leadership and defence industry were lily-white and hugely successful. Well, that can't be true. The real question is, if defence can't fix itself, why are they being trusted to do that again by this government?
And you and I have spoken many times. I mean, these frigates were to be built in Adelaide. We go back all the way back to the Adelaide submarine project as well. It clearly has been, over the years, a political decision to have these vessels built in South Australia. And people joked, but it's probably not very funny, that these vessels were being built to save the sea to Christopher Pyne.
Well, the Navy needs to have ships at sea with missile capabilities. So, right now the Hunter frigates are not going to do that. If there aren't any further delays, we won't get that first Hunter frigate until about 2033, a decade from now. There are vessels being built in Australia right now called the offshore patrol vessels, pretty large vessels. They don't have a single missile on them. So how about turning the ones we're already building into something that could have actual offensive military power?
Do you think this government, the new government, and Richard Marles as the minister, has the determination to cut through what is obviously, a very deep red tape blocking of what the previous ministers have wanted to do? I mean, is he going to be any better, or are you and I going to be sitting here, in another 10 years going, well, we haven't got a sub yet, the frigates were no good, we don't need tanks anymore? I mean, China's sitting there probably looking at this and laughing.
Yes, look, one sign that Richard Marles isn't serious is that the advisors he's got to help fix the broken department are the ex-secretary who was previously meant to fix the department, and two people that have never worked in industry or the defence organisation. What we really need is to empower some industrialists who actually successfully make things and get the bureaucrats out of their way. If our security matters, that's what we should be doing.
Well, it's funny you say that because that's exactly what happened, didn't it, during the Second World War? We turned over the manufacturing plants that were building, cars and other heavy machinery in Australia. We turned that over to the Defence Department, but it was run by the people who knew how to run the businesses.
And that's when you know you've got serious about your security. When it's not about hiding past bureaucratic failure, it's about really increasing your military power. And let's hope we don't have to wait for conflict for that to happen.
So do you have any confidence that that's the direction this government might go? It seems to me, though, that they are again beholden, as we've just spoken about, to the bureaucracy. I mean, if you look at the two people who did this review, which you say is probably pretty good if you read it in full, but what we've seen, it's not. But the two people chosen are buried deep within the political bureaucracy.
Yes, so I think the review they put together is more coherent than the fairly lightweight, patchy public document that the government released. But I still think the prescription that the defence can fix itself when it's more broken than it has been before is obviously wrong. And Richard Marles needs to change that approach. He's way too captured and beholden to the defence bureaucracy.